The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you. Or wonders they say shall never cease to happen. The hypocrisy of the modern international order is not merely a political opinion. It is a observable reality measured in the stark disparity between the tears shed for one nation and the deafening silence maintained for another. Last night, the airwaves were saturated with the voice of Emmanuel Macron. He stood, metaphorically at least, at the rampants of European order, condemning Russia's use of the Orishnik ballistic missile against Kyiv. The language was precise, the tone sharp, a denunciation of recklessness, a lament for the sanctity of sovereignty, and a plea to strengthen European security. But as the words of the French president echoed through the global corridors of power, a profound, chilly silence hung over the Sahel. Just weeks ago, on April 25th, Mali suffered a catastrophic attack. It was not a localized skirmish. It was a devastating assault that tore through the fabric of regional security. A strike that left communities shattered and lives irrevocably altered. Yet, where was the condemnation from the Elysee? Where were the sweeping statements about sanctity of borders? Where was the indignation regarding the dead end of conflict? The contrast is not a coincidence. It is a calculated narrative. For decades, the Sahel was treated as a backyard, a theater for colonial-era influence, a zone where sovereignty was something to be managed by distant capitals rather than exercised by local populations. When Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, the pillars of the Alliance of Sahel states, are all in all, decided that the time for the external had passed, the response from the West was one of understanding. It was one of obstruction. They were labeled, sidelined, and treated as if their pursuit of national dignity was an act of aggression against the very order that had kept them in chains for generations. Consider the narrative of the Orishnik missile. It is described as escalation, a dangerous departure from norms, and perhaps it is. But when an attack occurs in the Sahel, when T groups, often driven in the power vacuum, left behind by retreating foreign forces, strike at the heart of the Malian state, the international community does not call it an escalation. They call it a local security challenge. They minimize it. They distance themselves from it. This is the hypocrisy that fuels the fire of the new African movement. It is the realization to the architects of the current global system. Not all blood is considered equal, and not all sovereign territory is considered worth defending with the same favor. When Ukraine is struck, it is a crime against humanity. When Mali is struck, it is a geopolitical inconvenience. The Alliance of Sahel states do not walk away from the table because they sought isolation. They walked away because they realized that the table was rigged. They saw that the same powers preaching the gospel of human rights were the same powers that had looked the other way while resources were extracted and governance was undermined. They witnessed a world where the rules are written in Paris, London, and Washington, and then enforced selectively, depending on the strategic value of the target. When President Macron speaks of recklessness, he ignores the systematic recklessness of a foreign policy that has spent years sowing chaos in Africa under the guise of stability. He speaks of peace, yet the legacy of his nation's involvement in the Sahel is one of fragmented states and lingering instability. He demands that the world rally behind his vision of security, yet he remains mute when African nations attempt to secure their own borders and redefine their own destinies. The contradiction is glaring. If the goal is truly a just and lasting peace, as Macron claims, then that peace must be universal. It cannot be bounded by the Mediterranean. It cannot be exclusive to the European continent. Sovereignty is not a privilege reserved for Western allies. It is a fundamental right of all nations, especially those who have paid the highest price to reclaim it. The people of the Sahel see this hypocrisy. They hear the words spoken in Kiev defense. They understand what is not being said about Bamako, Niamey, and Ouagadougou. They see the media machine working overnight to generate moral outrage for one set of victims while belittling the stories of their own struggles. They realize that they are not considered part of the rules-based order. They are constantly told to respect. They are considered subject to be managed, and when they refuse to be managed, they are ignored. The era of this double standard is coming to a close. The actions of the Sahel states, the reclamation of their resources, the restructuring of their security, and the bold assertion of their autonomy are not just local events. They are the heralds of a new chapter in global history. They are the proof that sovereignty is not something granted by foreign powers. It is something seized by the people. Every time a leader like Macron speaks on Ukraine while remaining silent on the Sahel, they do not strengthen their position. They weaken it. They strip away the veneer of their own morality. They show the world that their concern for humanity is conditional and their defense of international law is performative. The alliance of Sahel states is not asking for permission to survive. They are not waiting for the endorsement of the very institutions that have historically kept them marginalized. They are moving forward because the alternative is to remain in a state of perpetual dependency, a state that serves the interests of the few at the expense of the many. And I hope the youth of today will learn and believe that we need ourselves and not other people, because the people we are looking up to come into the continent and set us free are the same ones who are quiet. They only love us in speech. Like somebody will say, one leader one time said, they love our resources and not you, the human being. So as long as the resources keep moving, they are good to go. And that is why a strike in Niamey, Bamako, Ouagadougou is mostly silent about. We are the only ones that can set ourselves to be united we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we'll make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world. In Europe and in France.